down with Clifton's oldest daughter, Ida Branham Fleming. She had been the first to get to her mother after Clifton shot her. She had witnessed her husband Dave being shot by Clifton. She relates her story here with details of first-hand knowledge that no other person could have brought to light in the case. She was solely responsible for raising the reward for his capture. She also testified for the state against Clifton. Here is her story.
I'm Ida Branham Fleming. I am the oldest daughter of Nancy and Clifton Branham. You asked me about Clifton? Let me tell you that he may have been my pa, but he was no account. I knowed him to be a mean, spiteful man. When I was a youngin', he was always gone a lot. Ma never knew when or if he'd ever come back. When he did come back, she didn't never know for how long he'd be there. I remember he had come home one time and was only there a day or two, when a man came by and wanted him to go to West Virginia with him. He never said nothing about how long he'd be gone or if he'd be back. Turned out that he didn't come back. He got arrested for killing a man in Kentucky. They sent him off to the pen when I was 6-year-old, but I can remember that well. We had it hard growing up. George twarn't but 4, and baby Liz was only a year old when he got sent up. It was hard on Ma. She had to deal with us kids, and 'twarn't much us kids could do, but we tried our best. George could pretty much take care of himself, but Liz needed tending too, and that was where I could help. They was some lean years, but kinfolk helped us a lot. Time passed, and I growed up, and when I was 15, a feller named Dave Fleming started coming around. He took a liking to me, and he asked Ma if he could marry me. She said I was too young, but after I turned 16, she agreed. Even though we got married, we still lived with Ma so as I could help her. George was now 14 and of an age where he could help. Liz was just about 12, so she could do her part now too. We was married near 5 years when Pa got his parole. I hadn't seen him in over 14 years. Dave and me had a couple of girls by then, and I was expecting another child when Pa got back. He didn't come looking for us or nothing. He was staying at Uncle Billy and Aunt Patsy's place. He did send word for us to come to Uncle Wibb's 'cause he wanted to see us. There was bad blood betwixt Uncle Billy and us. Dave had near killed their son Tandy in a fight, so we wouldn't go to their place. Ma had some real trouble seeing 'cause of the sore eyes. The poultices seemed to help her. Anyways, when word came, I commenced putting the poultice on Ma's eyes to help her afore we went over to Uncle Wibb's. Liz didn't want to wait and took off just a-running. She didn't remember ever seeing him. She had been there a while whenever we finally got there, and when we did, we saw that Uncle Billy and Aunt Patsy was there too. Dave and me stayed with the wagon out by the road to avoid trouble. Ma went in to see him. She tried to get Pa to come home with us, but he refused. She said that Liz had told him things that had upset him. She said he accused her of putting Liz in a pit with Dave Fleming, and that he blamed her for it. When she didn't come back with him right away, Dave told me to go in and ask Pa to come down to the road to talk. I went in, but Pa refused to come. Ma and me went back out to the wagon by the road, and she told us that Liz was going to stay with her Pa. He said he was going to raise her right. Now, it was getting late, so as we went on back home. Then 3 days before Christmas, Dave went over to Clintwood to see some friends. While he was there, he said he got word that Pa had been hired to kill him. I was at home doing chores when I heard them coming across the ridge above the house. They was in a shouting match. I went out and got on a horse and started out to meet them. I could hear them just around the bend in the road. Then there was a shot. I came around the bend just in time to see Dave fall back and off his horse. I could see that there was blood running down his face. I started just to screaming at Pa. He had shot Dave, and I knowed for sure he had killed him. I rode past him with Liz on the back of his horse. She was white as a ghost and wide-eyed. Pa just looked at me. He still had his gun out. I jumped off the horse and went to Dave. He was stunned and blood running all down his face. Pa must have thought he killed him too, 'cause he just rode on down the road. I commenced to tear off some of my petticoat to wipe the blood from Dave's face, all the while screaming at Pa. When I did get it wiped, I could see that the bullet had not gone into his head as I had feared. It just cut a patch of his hair out and grazed off. 'Twarn't no time afore I heard Ma down the road, just a-screaming something at Pa. Next thing I knowed, there were about 4 or 5 shots rang out. Ma was no longer screaming. I helped Dave to his feet, and we got the horses and went back down the road to where Ma lay. Her dress was smoldering and she wasn't moving. Pa had done shot her dead and took off. Uncle Lee Greer heard the commotion and came down just after Dave and me got to Ma. He could see she was dead. He went and took a door of the cabin so's we could carry Ma on it into the Whitaker house to prepare her for burial. He was a good man. He bought a lot of the stuff I gathered up to sell so's I could put up a reward for Pa's capture. I swore out a complaint against Pa with the sheriff, and he got a warrant for his arrest. It was sent out on the wire all around. Pa had taken Liz and gone over in Kentucky. Turned out he left her at Uncle Richard's and he took off. They said he went up towards Beaver in Floyd County, and there he was supposed to have killed another man. He had taken a girl and married her and started west when they caught him. They brung him back to Wise where they had his trial. I went there as a witness for the prosecution. Pa just glared at me the whole time I was on the stand. I didn't pay him no mind. He had done killed Ma and tried to kill Dave. I spit at him when I got off the stand. I was glad when they hanged him. It was a fitting end to him. He was nothing but trash to me.
One could understand her feelings towards her father, having witnessed some of the things he did, especially the killing of Nancy. Next up is one of Clifton's victims, Rance Smallwood. Clifton had tried to kill him after he had learned that Smallwood wanted to kill a friend of his named Francisco. Smallwood had killed one McClelland Adams, a corrupt lawman from Kentucky. He had collected a reward, taken Adams's pistol as a trophy. Clifton knew Smallwood from school, and the two had worked making moonshine with
Clifton Branham? I knew him for a long time and thought him to be a friend for most of that time. We were in school together, but things changed after we grew up. I was working with Art Venters when word came to me that a lawman gone bad by the name of McClellan Adams had a reward on his head. It was said that he was supposed to transport prisoners from over in Kentucky back to Virginia, but none of them made it. He was said to take them out to a desolate area and ask them, "Do you want it standing or running?" Either way, he would shoot them and claim they were trying to escape. I decided to go and claim that reward by killing Clell, which I did. I got the $100 and his gun. After I got back to work with Art, Clifton showed up and started working with us. I told him about killing Clell Adams, and that was how I got that improved .38 Smith & Wesson pistol. I told him that it was easy work and a fast way to make some money. I told him about another feller named Francisco that had a similar reward that I was thinking about going after. I did not know that this feller was a friend of Clifton's. If I had, I wouldn't have told him. Anyways, I took out to find him and scout out a place to get the job done. I didn't know that Clifton was hot on my tail, or I'd have been more careful. I commenced working with a feller building a church house to try to get an idea of where Francisco was and what it may take to waylay him. While I was working one day, a Fleming boy came up to me and said that Clifton was just over there on the ridge and he wanted me to come to him. I told him to tell Clifton to come to me. I was working. Clifton came and we had a chat, and he said he would go home with me and spend the night. I started getting a little suspicious of him because he just wasn't acting right. I didn't sleep good that night. Had a bad dream, which further put me on alert to Clifton. After breakfast, we decided to go squirrel hunting. Clifton kept trying to get behind me. I knowed he was up to no good. He did the same thing when we went back in the afternoon hunting squirrels. I knowed I had to keep my eye on him. When we got back, we were cleaning and oiling our guns. I suggested we go to Vess Soward's to see his girls. They invited us to stay for dinner. After dinner, the old folks went to bed and left us in the kitchen talking with the girls. Clifton still wasn't acting right. He didn't talk a lot. He just sat there, leaned back in a chair, picking at the wall with his pocket knife. I think it was about 9 o'clock when he stood up and said he was going and that he would see me tomorrow. It was good and dark, so I didn't trust going with him. I said I'd stay. He wasn't gone no time when there was a shot that came in through the hole he had picked in the wall. It hit me in the shoulder and I fell to the floor. I thought he would shoot again, but he didn't. He was gone. He left me there to die, he thought, but I recovered. I had trouble with my arm and shoulder ever since. Word got out that he had tried to kill me and he went on the run. That was the last I heard of him for a couple years. Then in 1887, word came that Clifton got arrested for the killing of Henry Vanover and was in the Kentucky pen for life. I thought that was a good thing and a fitting end of him.
Wilburn Branham is a brother-in-law to Clifton. He was Nancy's older brother. He shares about how Clifton met Nancy and a summary of their life together. He was not fond of Clifton and did not hide that fact. He offered up his home as a meeting place after Clifton was released from prison. It was the start of trouble that ended with execution in Wise.
I'm Wilburn Branham, but folks call me Wib. Nan was my little sister. It was her and my brother John and I who were left at home with Mom when Clifton came by on his way over to the pound. He was a smooth-talking kid that I didn't care much for. Mom hired him to work the field with us for a month. Dad had been killed in the Civil War, and all the rest of the kids had married and moved off. We needed the help getting the corn in, but I had to keep a close eye on him. I could see he had ideas about Nan, but she had been talking with a Mullins boy I liked, and I wanted to see them get together. The Mullins boy was the son of a well-to-do farmer in Dickinson County. Clifton was just a kid with nothing to offer her but trouble. She was headstrong and would not be persuaded that he had no future. He had already been in trouble over in Kentucky. They ran off while Mom was away. Mom finally agreed to them getting married, almost 2 years later, seeing that she wasn't going to come home. That's when she started to find out just what kind of man he was. They had 4 kids over the next 8 years, 3 girls and 1 boy. They lost their second girl at about 3 years old. She died from a cancer. In 1887, Clifton got involved with killing Henry Vanover over in Kentucky, along with his brother Tandy and another fellow. He was sent to prison with a life sentence. That left Nan alone with 3 young'uns to raise with no support from that no-account husband. I was surprised he got paroled. But he apparently got religion after going to the pen, and they thought he was a changed man. I've always heard that a skunk can't change its stripe and a bath won't change the smell. I think that is the case with Clifton. I'm glad they hung him for killing my sister.
Clifton Branham was an enigma. The stories or legends and myths that were spun about him are indeed wide-ranging. We have heard from a lot of people about this notorious outlaw. It is clear that he was a man with a dark and troubled past. The interesting part is that while in prison, he seemed to be on the straight and narrow path of a good citizen. Perhaps the times and circumstances were against him, though. His brother Richard seemed to know that he would not last on the outside. His brother-in-law Wilburn was not convinced that he was indeed a changed man, and showed outright skepticism of his success on the outside. His children barely knew him, and his son George seemed to have rejected him altogether. There was no record of him visiting with his father in prison or at the reunion upon his release. There was enmity between him and his son-in-law, presumably due to an alleged affair between Dave and Liz. His wife had seemed to try and make a go of it when he got out, but there was no evidence of any intention on Clifton's part to try to be reconciled with his wife. He had admitted to many liaisons with many women during their marriage and before his incarceration. In his confession, Clifton admitted to killing 2 people. He also admitted to attempting to kill 4 others, none of which that he was ever charged with by the law. There were newspaper stories of his involvement in the Hatfield-McCoy feud and participation in Klan activities in Letcher County, Kentucky. Some newspapers said he was responsible for the murder of 7 people. Clifton said from his cell in Wise County that he had been accused of a lot of things he never did. He was indicted for the murder of Anderson Moore in Floyd County, Kentucky, but never brought to trial. He received $50, a high-powered rifle, and the girl he married for that murder. He was caught and sent back to Wise County, Virginia instead. There are just so many facets to this story that it would take a book to tell it all. I hope you have enjoyed these interviews and the story of one of Appalachia's most notorious outlaws. I'm Chris Blevins for the Wise News.